Welcome to Tech Travels, hosted by the seasoned tech enthusiast and industry expert, Steve Woodard. With over 25 years of experience and a track record of collaborating with the brightest minds in technology, Steve is your seasoned guide through the ever-evolving world of innovation. Join us as we embark on an insightful journey exploring the past, present, and future of tech under Steve's expert guidance.
Welcome back, fellow travelers, to another exciting episode of Tech Travels. Today, we're excited to journey into the heart of technology and innovation with one of the most brilliant minds in the industry today, Ian Harris. Having shaped product and technology strategies for leading global firms, Ian's insights turned complex concepts into accessible knowledge, and his work is pivotal as we navigate this concept around AI, content creation, and the business frontier. Ian, it's fantastic to have you here. Could you give us a glimpse into your journey and what tech innovations you find the most thrilling today?
Steve, great to be on the program. I really appreciate you having me along. I've spent a long time, many years, helping companies build platforms. So helping them build technology that helps them deliver the services for their business to their customers. And so, as you can imagine, a lot of that is in translating what businesses need and turning it into tech talk so that engineers can build the thing that the businesses require, and really understanding from a business perspective what their requirements are so that when we actually deliver something, it actually gives them the real benefits that they need rather than what they think they need. And so I think the thing I've gathered over the years is that there's often a disconnect between what technology can bring and what businesses really need. And I think we're at a very interesting crossroads right now, especially with the emergence of these new AI technologies. As we're all trying to work out, what does it mean in terms of these capabilities, and what does it mean for business? What can we use it for? How is it going to affect jobs? What will it change in the economy? And I think that if your listeners have enjoyed a few of your previous podcasts, they'll be up to date on what this AI thing is all about. But I think it'd be great to explore today what this means for us in business and in even our personal lives and our jobs. How is this going to affect us on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, absolutely, Ian. I think the intersection of business needs and the technological capabilities is a pressing topic, especially with AI rapidly advancing. There's a lot of debate around this as its impact in the workforce. Just recently, I saw a report around the Stanford Social Innovation Review, for instance, said that AI could significantly reshape the job market. So let's delve into this and demystify really what this means around AI and for businesses and for individuals in practical terms, and how it's shaping jobs, the economy, and our daily lives.
Yeah, it's a good question. So, let's just take a step back for a moment. When we talk about this AI revolution, I'm seeing a lot of comparisons between this and the Industrial Revolution. Let's just be clear about what we're talking about here. What do we mean by the Industrial Revolution, and what do we mean by the AI revolution? If we go back to a few hundred years ago, so kind of mid 1700s to mid 1800s, we had a fundamental change in the way we as a society decide how we want to work. And the transformation there was really from a bunch of people that are providing services, agriculture, and broadly providing food and small amounts of services to local people. So you had farmers that were providing food for locals, and you had not much more than handiwork, really, done at home, making clothes, making shoes, making things on a kind of one-by-one basis for people that I expect most of these artisans would know the people they were selling their products to. So that's where we were. And then the Industrial Revolution, which was brought about by some fundamental technology changes, and that's where I think the kind of link comes in, where we went from making a small amount of something for a small amount of people to making a large amount of something for a large amount of people. And so we went from broadly a distributed workforce across an entire country to moving a lot of people into cities because despite the technology, we need a lot more people in factories making these things, and then being able to distribute these things to more people in more places. So a much more global audience rather than just the local people that you knew. So that's our industrial revolution. So technology changed, but it was a fundamental shift in how we, as humans on this planet, operated, and it took place over probably 60, 70, 80 years. So it took a long time from beginning to end, is what we consider that. When we're looking at the AI revolution, it's only been a few months, actually, maybe a year, where we've had this capability where we've been talking about AI for many years, and it's certainly been helping us for some time. It's helping us with translations, it's helping us with search, it's helping us with some fundamental tasks that broadly humans are not very good at. It's very difficult to do translation. It's very difficult to do. Search. It's very difficult to gather lots of information from lots of different places. But now we're at a point where AI is starting to do things that seem a lot more human-like, that seem to be able to do things that humans actually think they're pretty good at on an average basis, and it can do it at a level where actually that's actually not too bad. And so there's two areas that are probably worth talking about there. The first is in terms of large language models and their ability to manipulate and generate text, so generate actual words that make sense in a sentence on particular topics, and also in terms of graphics, so being able to create new, novel graphics, almost photo-like realism from a textual description. And now we're starting to see actual videos being made, so stringing those individual frames together and creating a video as well. So we've got this situation now where we're starting to get technology that feels like it's much more like a human doing human stuff. I mean, even a few years ago, if you said that you could type a few words in and get something to generate a poem or generate a couple of blocks of an essay or a news article, or could summarize text, you'd be hard pressed to find something that could do it well and could fool a human into thinking some other human had actually done that. But now we're at that point. So what does that mean in terms of a revolution? What does that mean in terms of our workplace? Well, if we are someone that generates text for a living, like we're a content writer, and we now have the ability to type a few words in and get pretty much in a few seconds, an equivalent sort of text that's good enough for many purposes. Yeah, absolutely. That's going to change the way that I do my work because me as a content writer, I'm directly threatened by something that can do pretty much what I do, or at least some people think it's a broad equivalent. Okay, so that's interesting. As a graphic designer, if I have a company that's building logos or pictures, or generally puts out ads and needs some images, instead of hiring a photographer or employing a graphic designer, maybe I can just type in a few words and get a bunch of images that are, actually, that's pretty good. That's close enough for what I need. And the difference there is that we can now do that at a cost that's a tenth, a hundredth of what it would take to get a human to do the same thing. So I think that's where the sense that people are getting that there's some threat to jobs, some sort of revolution happening. Now, the equivalent to the Industrial Revolution, which took place over many, many years, over a long period of time, and fundamentally changed our society, I don't think it's at that level in terms of the fundamental shift in what we do everywhere. And I think that there's probably a few different analogies that are better off in describing what we're doing with AI. Steve, do you know the fairy story, the elves and the shoemaker? Do you know that story?
No, I don't. Please tell me.
So if you find a kid's book with fairy stories in it, in this particular story, the shoemaker and his wife are down to their last piece of leather. They're kind of done. They're pretty poor. They put it out one night, and for reasons unknown, a couple of elves rock up and make a beautiful, beautiful pair of shoes. Beautiful, perfectly stitched, because the elves are tiny. Make a beautiful pair of shoes. And the shoemaker and his wife wake up the next morning, find this beautiful pair of shoes, and put it out in the window. Someone walks by and goes, "Oh my goodness, beautiful pair of shoes," pays a lot of money for it. Then they buy 2 pieces of leather, leave it out the next night, end up with 2 pairs of shoes, and sell another pair of beautiful shoes. And over a few nights, weeks, it's not really clear in the story, the shoemaker and his wife go from being poor and destitute to doing very well for themselves. And at some point they go, "Hang on a second, maybe work out what is going on overnight." So they stay up and watch what happens and realize that these elves have been making these shoes for them. And so they bust in and want to say thank you. So they make some clothes for the elves who you don't generally get clothes made for them. They're very thankful and they go off on their way. So you've got this situation where the shoemaker is using a magical force in order to produce better goods than they could on their own. And so if you look at it as a kind of analogy of the Industrial Revolution, we're going from just being able to do things with your hands to using some magical force, industrial tools, mechanism, to be able to do something more productive or faster or make more of them, for sure. But it's actually a better analogy of the AI revolution that we're seeing at the moment. And that is that I think that what AI gives us, and this is a good example, is in terms of computer programming, is it's a kind of force multiplier. So whatever energy you put into it, you can get even more out of it than you could before because something's kind of giving you a boost. And so when AI is used for computer programming now, instead of having to sit there and type every character that the programmer needs to put into to convey to the computer what it needs to do, or indeed copying a chunk of code off the internet and then customizing it to your requirements, a bit more efficient. But then if you can tell it, I need a piece of programming that does this particular task for me using this particular language, and here's the things you need to know, and then it goes and types it up for you, then you can see that I can grab that chunk of code that basically is completely customized to my requirements and move on with something else. And now I'm dealing with the whole programming at a much higher level than having to worry about individual variables and lines of code, and even the syntax I don't have to worry about anymore because that's been taken care of for me. And so it is much more like a force multiplier in that respect. So it gives me much more power. I'm still in control of the program. I still have to make sure it works. I still have to pull it all together and make sure it makes sense. And I still have to understand the business requirements. But now I can get so much more done than I could in the same period of time because I have this magical force behind me to do something that wasn't there before. And so I think that's an interesting comparison with what we're talking about here in terms of the AI revolution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the potential of AI to streamline our own workflows and enhance productivity is really incredible. I know in my own role, I know I found AI to be a very powerful tool to automate complex tasks without needing a large team of developers by my side. And I think it's really about harnessing AI to achieve a greater sense of velocity at our work. Yet I think as we integrate these capabilities, it keeps coming back into my mind that the ethical considerations really continue to keep coming to the forefront. It's how do we balance efficiency gains with the potential impact on jobs, particularly in creative fields. I think about it if we were to have a critical dialogue that intersects the technical with the human aspect of AI, where do you see this conversation heading, especially in terms of ethical use and its
Right.
impact on the workforce overall?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, as we're kind of barreling down this course of trying to work out what we do with this technology, I think there's been a few interesting articles written about how do we handle this as a society. What does this mean for us in terms of the choices that we make with this tool that we've been given that gives us these magical capabilities now? How do we as a society make decisions that are fair, that are beneficial? And again, it comes down to how we make decisions about our society. But there's been a couple of good examples where I think that it can be used in a great way and we can get many benefits as a society. I don't think anyone really wants to go back to having farms and making clothes on an individual basis. I don't think we're going there. So are we going to step back from AI and all the benefits that it gives us? Well, jobs are going to change, or at least tasks are going to change within a job. So you might still be a computer programmer, but how you go about doing that, there's no way that you would go about doing it much more slowly. Any company is going to say, well, if I can use an AI-powered programmer, and by AI powered, I mean a human that is got the benefit of AI, and I can get maybe 30, 40, 50% more done for the same amount of expenditure, you'd be crazy not to take advantage of that particular capability, for sure. It becomes a little more nuanced, I think, when it comes to art and creativity and what that means. And the recent negotiations in Hollywood in respect to AI and its use in films is a kind of starting point for what we mean as how we decide to treat that. But there's always going to be a push to try and get the most efficient way of doing something with the tools that you have available. And so if we keep that in mind, if we can get more done with less, fundamentally, then what does it mean? What does that free people up to do that is not what they're doing right now? And I think that we have to break apart those two, the two problems there. One is I love what I'm doing and I want to keep doing it. That's probably going to change. You're probably not going to have much choice about that. But what possibilities does it open up for new things that I could be doing that were not possible before? And so I think it'll be exciting to see what artists are doing with AI as a force multiplier. What can I do as an artist that I couldn't do previously? But now I have these technology capabilities that enable me to do new and exciting things that are not available before. But as we look at the legislation that's coming in place in the EU, for example, in terms of how we deal with data now in Europe, they're very passionate about the privacy of personal data and how that's used, and even in terms of particularly copyright. So there's probably some areas that are on the edge of AI at the moment where we need to, I think, not rein it in, but control a bit more carefully in terms of what data is used for teaching AI, and do that in an ethical way. I think that's very important. That if you're producing work and it's being used for a business purpose by someone else, you should be compensated for the thing that you're producing. That sounds very fair. That sounds very reasonable. You shouldn't just be able to take stuff and do whatever you like with it without compensating the person if they hadn't made that available publicly, for example. So I think that's an important part.
Yeah, Ian, I think that you've raised compelling points around AI as a force multiplier, especially in creative fields. And as we look at things like AI generated art, it becomes more prevalent, and it distinguishing features between human created and AI generated work really becomes crucial. So your thoughts on digital signatures is intriguing. Could this be the key to preserving the individual identity and possibly the ownership of a person or a person's identity in the digital realm? How do you see this playing out, particularly with the increased discussions around data ethics and copyright in the AI space?
Yeah, Steve, it's a very good point, and I think we're seeing a little more emphasis on that now. So places like companies like Midjourney and to some extent DALL-E 3 are actually embedding watermarks into their images so that we can detect whether or not they are an AI generated image, and whether it's or whether it's been done by a human. So Facebook, Meta, for example, is now implementing a process by which they are going to analyze the images as they're uploaded, and then be able to put a tag on them if they've been generated by an AI source. So that's good, because that. And I think we need to be honest as well. Like, if it's generated by AI and it's not something that is actually real, there's a fine line between a nice, pretty picture of an elephant that's eating a banana, and the next step to some known person doing something that they wouldn't want to be seen doing, but there's a picture of it. There's a line there where you really need something to tell you if the photo of the famous person doing something they don't want to see a photo of, if it's genuine or not. That's very important. Whether it's a fantasy picture that looks interesting and is pretty, it's probably not so important. But there is a line there, especially in terms of our society, our politics, our decision making is based on the information that we're given. And so knowing that it's genuine, that's, I think, the important point there. So you're absolutely right. We need a way of being able to determine whether some image is true or not. And so companies are starting to take that into account now. And we're also seeing it on the other side as well. So camera manufacturers are now starting to put in watermarks into their photos. So it's the other way around, so that you can tell that it's an actual photo that was taken, through a lens onto a sensor, and it was recorded onto a disc, and we know that it actually came from a camera of a real thing that happened out there in the world. And so we're seeing it from both sides now, both in terms of being able to analyze AI images and tell that they are AI, but also in terms of this was a genuine photo taken in the real world of something that was in front of the camera.
It's interesting. It's like the more we crave more things such as like artificially generated things, the things
Hmm.
that, we kind of crave for is that on the flip side of that is that we're still searching for something real and genuine and actually created by a
Yeah,
person.
and this is the kind of funny thing about humans. I mean, we love uh, we we have such a great imagination, and we love that kind of fantasy of being able to create anything. But we also crave that connection of reality, and is this something that I can trust in? That sense is also very important to us as well. And I think you bring up some very good points about where the subtleties and the dangers, in fact, in respect to AI are going to be, as we try and work out what is real, what does it mean, where are we placing our trust in terms of the images that we're seeing, or even the text that we're seeing. If I can produce a very pervasive text, persuasive text that tells me about a topic that I'm interested in and I'm convinced about it, but it came from an AI, is that different from if a human generated text that persuaded me of it's some very interesting kind of subtleties there in terms of how we get information and where we place our trust as well. So that's a very good point.
Talking about trust, I really have to bring this up. I saw a news article that Google was going to start kind of funding their own kind of private laboratory for them to be able to use. That way they can use this lab so they can look at and evaluate and apply a framework and standards around their AI models. And I'm all for, regulation. I'm all for frameworks. I'm all for, prescriptive guidance. Um, but I almost kind of think it seems a little bit almost too much like, there's not going to be enough transparency
Mm,
there in terms
mm.
of what type of framework is really being applied here. And I think I kind of see, across cloud platforms, across the different entities that can create AI, there's so many different models out there, and everyone's got a ethical AI framework or some sort of AI framework you see in the industry. And there's so many of them out there. No one see, you can always kind of pick and choose which framework you want to apply to, but it really kind of seems like, is there a way for us to kind of like take a look at the industry as a whole, put a broad spectrum, or is there a way to kind of put just some sort of governance and framework around AI so there's more transparency, more trust that we can build into it? That's not just, hey, well, we give everything to Google, so we have to trust them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's a good point. I mean, it's fine for Google to find out about their own models themselves, but it's not clear exactly what they're exposing about what they found as well. And the challenge is manifold there. So, for a large language model, if you ask it a question, it will give you an answer. But if you ask it the same question again, because it starts off with a random number, it's going to give you a different answer. And so it's not, there's no cut and dried direct response that you can kind of say, well, it said this, and so that's the answer. You kind of have to ask it a lot of times. And so this, this complexity added to the fact that what can you ask it? Which area are you interested? Are we interested in politics? Are we interested in facts about are we interested in a legal argument? There's so many areas that you could delve into. It's going to be really difficult to work out a kind of subtle framework that works in all cases. But I think as technologists, as a society, one of the important things we need to do is work out what are the implications of the things that we're doing, and work back from there. So if I'm now creating text that is going to be influencing people, then what are the principles that I would normally apply in, say, in journalism? So I'd want a couple of sources. I'd want to be able to back it up. I want to be able to have some sense, at least for myself, that it was true. How can we build that in to ensure that the things that AI, large language models, are generating have some sense of believability and trust in them? Or if it's the case that we can't trust them at all and we just have to treat them like it's a fiction writer, that's fine too. But we kind of need to decide where is that line that we're willing to cross in terms of where we place our trust in the results from these particular engines. And so I think that
Hmm.
I mean, it's great that we're doing experiments on our own products. That's fantastic, and good that we know what we need to do to fix them. That's very important. But I think you're right. It needs to be a transparent result. What do we find from doing these tests? Okay, so we found that 87% of the time it told the truth, 13% of the time it made it up. And the difficulty then, of course, is, okay, so what does that mean? I mean, again, we also seem to have different expectations on computer systems than we do on humans. So if I have an accounting system, I expect the numbers to be correct. I expect them to be right every time. There's no doubt about my expectations there. But we all know that humans make mistakes. And we're influenced, and we have devious, often duplicitous methods of achieving our aims. We are not entirely trustworthy ourselves, let's be honest. So how do we translate that expectation on humans? Which again, we expect humans to have opinions and feelings and make mistakes. And so in some ways, we're actually setting the bar higher for these artificial systems. We want them to be true all the time, or at least know that they could not be true. But we kind of need some methodology, some system that is similar in some ways to the way we treat humans. So, Steve, I've listened to many of your podcasts. I think you speak with interesting guests. You obviously are well respected in the industry. And so, I put you in a position of trust in terms of what you say. If you said something new to me, I'd be like, okay, well, the other stuff I heard from him made perfect sense. So I expect what he says now is true as well. We kind of build trust over time. So we need a similar system for, in a transparent way, for these artificial systems to build that trust over time as well.
And it's interesting. I really want to kind of start to kind of transition into this segment around AGI, and I really want to talk about what are some of the technological challenges and breakthroughs that we really need to achieve AGI, and what's the timeline that we start to foresee this happening?
Yeah, so we're by AGI we mean an all-knowing, all-perfect intelligence that can answer anything and give us everything we need all the time. It's the kind of ultimate AI goal, and the challenge is that the companies that are building these models have kind of run out of data. They came about, these companies, because humans as a whole have basically taken everything they know and shoved it on the internet. So everything we know now is all out there. It's all publicly accessible. And so effectively they were able to slurp this all up and shove it into a very large computer and get out a database that enabled them to generate text. As a really simple way of describing what happened with large language models. Now the challenge is that they've slurped up all the text. There is not much left other than private collections of stuff that is available for these large language models to learn from. So what do we do next? Well, we can get large language models to generate text, so maybe we can learn from that. And so we're starting to see artificial text being used to train AIs. And again, of course, it's not as good quality because it's not as good as humans yet. But now that's starting to have an impact. But I think the pace of change is going to take place because now we're seeing companies that are doing high-level negotiations with organizations that have more data. So we've just seen an agreement with Reddit, for example. We're not sure who it's with just yet, but they've agreed to sell the Reddit data to an AI company so that they can, again, slurp up all the stuff that's in Reddit, which is generally regarded as quality because it's by real humans answering real questions. And so there's an example where these AI companies are now trying to find every other corner of data that they can get access to. And I think what we'll find is that other companies that hold large quantities of data and information and text it'll be hard for them not to negotiate a good deal with one of these companies to get hold of all the rest of the data available to humans. And then we need some, as every year goes by, we get more computing resources for less cost. And it's because we're at this point in 2024 where we can run these massive models at all. We still need more computing power in order to be able to get to that point. So I think we're at the point now where the best language models that we've got is doing a very credible job, but it's not quite there yet. There's some areas that it's better than humans. There's many areas that it's not. But I think within the next 2 to 3 years, we'll be at a point where it will be indistinguishable from different styles of humans.
Incredible. What are your predictions for the next 5 years in terms of how people can look at AI in terms of their normal everyday life? What can they kind of expect to see, and what should you be kind of looking at from or advising businesses from a business perspective on their outlook on how they're gonna adopt AI into their platforms?
Yeah, I think the big advantage we're going to see from AI is that things that were really expensive before and very hard to do will become a lot easier for a lot more people. And that kind of segues nicely to a project that I'm working on called Pulse Podcasts, where we are creating podcasts for companies that would not normally be able to afford. I mean, Steve, you know what it's like to make a podcast. You've got to record it, you've got to edit it, you've got to have script, you've got to have, or if you have guests, you've got to spend time recording, then you've got to get the whole thing together and package it up and write. There's a lot of work involved in producing a podcast. And the process that we're going through now enables us to take existing content that companies are creating for their marketing purposes, like newsletters or blogs, and we create scripts using large language models, and then we use some of the best voiceover AI engines to create the actual voices. And now we're at a point where we can create a podcast from an existing set of marketing content for about a tenth of the cost it would normally take to make the equivalent podcast. So that's a good example where we're going from something that would just be not economically feasible previously to being, okay, well, now this is within the cost framework that works for me, for my business. And so whereas previously some companies would not be able to afford a content writer to write content for their ads, or to be able to create beautiful images, or be able to afford a top-end photographer to take pictures, now they can do that for a much lower price point. And so we're going to see the democratization of content and art and words. And the great thing there is that that'll make that much more accessible to more companies in more different ways. And so instead of having to try and reduce costs by outsourcing call centers to different countries, we'll be able to customize our chat models to understand my business deeply and to not make mistakes less often than humans, to be more responsive. And I'm sure you've been on the other side of a chat with some company where you're trying to return something or get some feedback about a flight or some kind of interaction, and you kind of know that the person on the other end is clearly dealing with a dozen different chats at the same time, and they're cycling between them, and they're trying to give answers, and you give them a response to something and they come back 2 minutes later. We're going to see a lot more service level improvements in terms of those interactions with systems. So companies are always looking to reduce costs. They're always looking to make it a more efficient business, and AI gives them a chance to take costs out of their business in one area, and then again, as a society, things will change. There'll be new jobs, there'll be new opportunities, and we'll have a change from spending time and money on labor and spending time and money on making efficient systems and improving performance and being able to grow the business, but by doing it by improving the quality of services being delivered to customers. And so I think that's the important thing to consider in terms of AI. It does enable us to reduce costs. It will, in many cases, change the way people are doing their jobs, but that frees up money to spend in other areas where we can actually grow a business and improve it and take new ideas and turn that into a reality. So I think, Steve, we're at a very exciting time. And as all the companies are looking at how they can use AI and what does it mean for my business, the key takeaways, I think, are it's a great force multiplier for things that you're already doing. And there's areas that you can get into that might have been previously way too expensive for you, but now we can do that at a much lower price point and enable them to conduct business in new and exciting ways.
Yeah, I totally agree. I couldn't agree more. Wow, that was absolutely incredible. That's amazing. And again, your insights you're a fountain of knowledge, and I could go all day on this. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on our Tech Travels today. Your insights and experiences have really shed a lot of light onto this pivotal role and how it's shaping our future, especially in the content creation and business strategy aspects. And I just want to say thank you for taking the time to share your wisdom with us and our listeners. And we're all looking forward to seeing how this is going to it can impact all of us in the next few years. So your insight is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Tim. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Thank you.